Olá a todos, bem-vindos a mais uma conversa da Look Mag. Certamente que quem é fã de Neurosis já olhou para o meu convidado e já percebeu que eu tenho comigo o Steve Von Till. É verdade, mas ele não veio aqui hoje falar sobre a banda, veio falar sobre o novo álbum de Steve Von Till, dele próprio. Ou seja, é o sétimo álbum que ele está a lançar em nome próprio. É um álbum maravilhoso que vai sair já no dia 16 e é sobre isso que nós vamos falar hoje. Steve, first of all, thank you for accepting our invitation. It is a huge pleasure to have here you with us. So, welcome to our talks.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
I would like to ask because you are a very creative person, not only in music, but in art and everything. You are always creating. But concerning music, when did music came into your life? Because everybody knows you. Neurosis, of course, but everybody knows that you are a great musician and with a great vocal. But when did it all started?
I loved listening to music when I was a kid. My parents had a nice sounding stereo, growing up, and they
Yes.
both listened to different types of music, but they both listened to a lot of music. And my dad played guitar and sang around the house, kind of folk music. Um, and so I always just kind of had it in me, but I remember I was always addicted to sound. Like I remember the first time with headphones, knowing that there were different things happening with the left ear and the right ear. And even if I wasn't a fan of the music I was hearing, the strange things you would hear that I didn't know until I got older where they came from. Like as the song is fading away and you hear some sound you didn't hear during the music come up out of nowhere. And so I think I always just had a curiosity about interesting sounds and sonic things, more so even than music, because I never applied myself to being a good musician. I never took lessons. I never worked as hard as a lot of my friends to become a good guitarist or whatever, but I know how to do a lot with very little.
That's a very we usually say that's a very good point to be even better than the others because you are more sensitive to some things that maybe others are not.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to compare. Sometimes I wish I could be a better player or I had more skills, uh, but I think I do have a strength and I know how to express myself
Yeah,
with sound.
and in words.
Thank you.
Why did you do you remember when you pick up a guitar for the first time?
My dad bought me my first electric guitar. I was probably 9, but I didn't take it seriously. Um, Mostly because it didn't look cool. It didn't look like a rocker guitar. Like I loved my earliest records. I mean, I was really young and I was into heavy rock. I think I was the same age as the students I teach, 9, 10 years old, and I was buying my own. I saw my mom took me to see Kiss when I was 9,
Wow.
uh, because I was already obsessed. But I loved AC/DC and Deep Purple and Jimi Hendrix and I always just wanted these more extreme sounds. And so I got a better guitar maybe when I was in high school, but it really took somebody else to throw me in. Like I met a guy in a class in high school and I learned a little bit, but not very much, like every kid that gets a guitar learns like a couple of notes or smoke on the water or. Um, but he asked me to be a rhythm guitarist in his band because he was, into all of those kind of Eddie Van Halen and stuff. And so he showed me a few things and I learned better in that mode. Like, okay, I'm learning for a purpose. Like we're actually going to do this together, and I'm going to play these chords and you're going to play stuff on top of it. That interaction with becoming a part of even a small community like a band, like you've got your own group, you've got your own club, you've got your own gang, whatever it is, you've got and that led to it felt pretty untouchable, because it was still like arena rock bands were it's all I knew from radio or whatever. And so it wasn't until getting a little bit older, again, also in high school, as a teenager, where I met people that turned me on to the underground, that there was a place where it doesn't matter if you were good, you didn't have to want to make it or get a record deal. You could go, you know, put on a gig in somebody's basement or somebody's backyard or an abandoned movie theater or, you know, whatever. And so I discovered punk rock, and that changed my life. We can create our own community. We can create our own alternative, and anybody that feels inspired to do something with music or art has the freedom to do so. You just have to want it.
And since then that you are a follower of do it yourself, right?
Constantly. Yep.
You
Live it.
have your own label record, right?
Yeah, about 20 feet that direction is the office. Yeah, right over there.
And you are at the bar now at your
Yeah, this is
studio?
in the barn. Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty cool. Back then, did you had someone that you look up to, not only playing the guitar but also singing, or singing became later an interest for you later on?
Uh, Really more than any sort of style, I just love that people were doing it. And so anybody that had some kind of original sound, you know, and I guess, you know, as a teenager, I wanted intensity. I just wanted it to be intense, you know. Um, Discharge was a record that Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing was a record that changed my life because it just sounded so insane and had such simple words. But you know, but back then we were teenagers and we were screaming. We were as loud as we could, as fast as we could. Um, and but who I looked up to were those that were older than me, which back then seemed like a lot older than me, but it was probably only a
Yeah.
few years. You know, Ian McKay from Minor Threat, starting Discord Records. You know, the people that running Maximum Rock and Roll magazine. The people putting out compilations that exposed me that this underground music wasn't just in my area, but it was actually across the world. There were these compilation records that had bands from all over Europe and all over the Americas. Back when actually culture was more different. It felt like culture now seems it's getting a little bit more global.
Mhm.
You know, you can go everywhere in the world and things have gotten a little more similar. But back then, if there was a punk rock band from Sweden and it sounded like it was from Sweden. If there was one from Poland, they sounded like they were from Poland. If there was one from the west coast of the United States, they sounded like they were
Yeah.
from the west coast of the, you know, so uh, getting exposed to that world really opened my mind. And so it was the people doing that work behind the scenes, uh, creating the culture that inspired me most. And I just wanted to be a part of all of that culture.
Looking now to the world and to the music universe, everything's changed with the internet and social media. Everything is different back then in the 80s and in the early 90s. How do you see the music world today? It's more easier to do music, or it's more difficult to put the music in the place that the music belongs, near the public?
It's definitely easier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back then, even to order, if I wanted to order a record from an underground band, I had to put, you know, cash money in an envelope
And
and
send it.
yeah, and hope for the best, you know. And now I can have it right now.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you could tell me about a band and I can be listening to it in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's the internet has kind of democratized
Mm-hmm.
access, but it also has made it so, and I don't know if this is a bad thing or a good thing. It's just different. Like you said, it's just different. Also, anybody can put something up there. You don't have to have the same, like back then to go and put together a band and to get a gig and to put out a record took a lot of work, you know. Whereas now with a few $100s worth of gear, you can do it from your house.
Yeah.
Uh, so so that also means there's an infinite amount of music available. So it's harder to maybe it's harder to know what to find or where to find it, or harder for maybe your band to get discovered in this infinite sea of stuff. But I get it. Probably comes down to younger kids knowing more than I do about how it is now, finding their own unique ways of finding their people, finding their communities.
Because the world changed, and this is their world today. Everything had an evolution, so we don't know what comes in the future, but this is what we have now, and this is what they have now, because they don't know our reality back in the 80s or in the early 90s. So it's
Yeah.
natural that that is different. You are also a poet and a spoken word artist. When did you begin to be interested in poetry? You have several books released, and you give a lot of value to the words that you write and that you put on your songs. When did all that begin to you? The importance of the words.
I think as a young man, I was very interested in poetry as far as reading it. You know, I really enjoyed reading the American transcendentalists, you know, the ones that were thinking differently and about
Mhm.
wanting to reconnect to nature way back in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Um, and um, and just being open-minded and in university discovering other poets like Sylvia Plath and the Beat Generation poets, which came up and you know through the 50s and 60s, and so I always enjoyed it. But as far as my own poetry, I mean, I've written lyrics for songs since I was a teenager, you know, and so I'm always keeping journals and I'm always writing. And there's you know, I think probably my entire adult life I have been writing poetry. I just never did it with the intention of publishing or sharing it with anyone else. I didn't feel it was worth anything. But it was in the process of writing the previous record, No Wilderness Deep Enough, where I had written that record by accident. I didn't intend to compose a record. I did it um, just by following a sonic rabbit hole using different instruments. And when my friend Randall Dunn, after when I played it for him, I said, I don't know what this is. I think I made an ambient neoclassical record. What is this? I want to go in the studio and mix it. I think it's pretty. I think it's beautiful. And he said, I agree, but you should sing on it and make it your next solo record. And I disagreed. I thought he was wrong. I thought that this beautiful music with piano and synthesizer and strings did not need my harsh voice on it. But um, but I respected his opinion enough to investigate his claim. So I spent a week during my winter break with a microphone, not even here in the studio, but in the living room, and I would just wake up every morning with my coffee and um, improvise harmonies. And I found I really enjoyed singing into those textures. Um, in fact, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed singing into guitar-based music. And I needed words. So some of the words came to me by listening and what the song suggested. Some of the words came from my own mind and my own thinking, and others I would dig through my journals and look for. I need a line that makes sense. I need a line that has this many syllables. You know, in a song, words have to sound right. You know, before they mean anything, they have to sound like they belong there.
Mhm.
So I was looking for a line, and I took this line from a poem, and that line was, uh, "We have the sea, and we will always have the sky." And I took it because it really fit right where I needed it to fit. And then I felt guilty because I looked back on the page I took it from, and it was actually a good poem. And I said, "Shit." I just ruined a good poem. Not that I had any I plans to do anything with it, but that clicked something in my mind. If I thought that was a good poem, maybe I should allow some of my poems to live their own life as
Yeah.
poems. And
And
so
that
that's where that started. Yeah.
that's when that started. Exactly, exactly. Are you compulsive created person? Because you have neurosis, you have tribe of Neurot, averse man, your solo work, your writing. Are you a very compulsive created person? Creative person?
Um, I guess so. I mean, once I'm in something, I focus quite a bit, and it is when I'm in the middle of creating, I definitely become very self-absorbed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard for my brain to get out of it. I'll catch myself having a conversation with a friend, and I realizing I have no idea what they just said because my mind is on,
Somewhere else.
yeah, it's on the project.
Yeah.
So I suppose in that way it is compulsive. But to me, it also feels like not a negative compulsion, but it feels like a wellness practice. Like it's something I need to do to stay sane.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. But then you have another thing that keeps you very, very awake because you are a teacher. And
Yeah,
that's absolutely fabulous because you are an elementary school teacher. That's lovely, Steve.
I
How
love
did you,
it. Yeah.
how did you become a teacher? I have my husband is also a teacher,
Oh,
and
cool.
an art and design teacher, and it's nice to see him with the young students. But when we look at you, we never suppose no, Steve until is a teacher. How did you become a teacher? Because it's something that you love to do.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like many of the great things in my life, it just fell into my lap. It just happened. Um, we were getting off the road in 1999, and I had brought up the idea with the guys that we that that our life was very fragile at that point, and that we were kind of doing our first attempts at seeing if we could stay on the road enough um, to try to earn a living from music, because I've never earned a living from music. It's not how I make my money. Um, we did spend a couple of years there in the late '90s seeing if it was possible,
Mhm.
and what I discovered is we were actually just digging debt and borrowing money from this place and that place, or relying on uh, you know all these factors, which did not seem like a sustainable way to keep something creative and true and honest.
Yeah.
And I never wanted anything to have us to consider to compromise our vision or our art, and two, five families trying to earn a living off of some crazy weird music doesn't make any sense. So if one person gets injured or breaks their arm, or then and there's no security in it for our children either. Like there's no people could like you today, and tomorrow they don't give a shit. And
Yeah.
so maybe we should, in order to make it last forever, find careers that we enjoy or that we like, and that make sense, and that allow us enough free time to continue um, making our art and doing it as it makes sense with our lives. And so literally I thought, maybe I should work with kids. And somebody who knew I had a college degree in the past, when I lived in the state I lived in California at that time, they were desperate for teachers in bad neighborhoods or
Ah,
economically uh, underserved neighborhoods. Um, they're not bad. They're just they're ones with that struggle financially,
yeah.
right? They had a hard time keeping teachers in schools, and so they had a program where if you had a university degree in anything, if you had a 4-year degree, you could go into a classroom right now and start teaching, and you could take your education classes at night. And I had a young family, So that was a lot of work, but um, that seemed right to me. And it didn't totally click at first when they first mentioned it, but then I heard a statistic, and this statistic was that the prison system in the United States is largely private. They are run as it's largely owned by
Yeah.
for-profit corporations. And so when they started to privatize the prison system, they would look at certain numbers to know how many prison cells to build in the next 10, 15 years. And one of those numbers was how many children are not reading at grade level by end of grade 3. And I thought, well, shit, I
Yeah.
can teach a kid to read, you know? Yeah, so if I can walk this path and it gives me a steady paycheck even though it's not a big one, and it's a school year, so I still have a lot of vacation time to make music, and I can make a difference in my world and in my community, then that's where I want to be. So that's how I got into it.
Does your students know that you are a musician and that you have several bands?
They don't have any context for underground music or like our scene,
Yeah,
or our
yeah,
but they do know I'm a musician, and especially my students in the last 15 years because of the internet, right? So
yeah.
now they Google and they find out. And they also know sometimes I take days off to travel. I'm like, where were you, Mr. Von Till? I went to Holland last week, for a
You are the super cool teacher they have.
well, some days they don't think that. Yeah, it
Oh,
depends on how hard I'm making them work. But yeah,
but that's good
um,
because responsibility it's needed. They have
totally.
to learn. Yeah.
You got to get your stuff done. Um, but yeah, so they don't really. But I think it's good for them to see that there can be a person who is. I wouldn't say I'm famous, but
Mm,
I'm known.
yeah.
So there's a musician who's known internationally, and I have followers and fans, and I have records and videos on the internet that look professionally done. But I come earn my living, and I pay my way to survive and to have a roof over my head and groceries by hanging out with them all day. So I think it's nice for them to see that art is a passion and music is a passion, and not for fame and fortune.
Exactly, exactly. It's a very, very good example. I think it's the best example you could give anyone. Before we spoke about the label Neurot Recordings, um, you found the label in 1999.
Yeah.
Looking back, how do you feel about this? It was a good choice. It has been the best choice for you and for all the work and the albums and the bands. What do you think now, looking back?
It depends on what day you ask me.
Today.
Yeah. Uh, I mean, like I said, I started it because I wanted to do, when I discovered the underground community, I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to participate. And as a teenager, I started a fanzine and I interviewed bands, and we went to the photocopy machine and we photocopied and sold it for $1, and I wanted to start a record label, and I wanted to be in a band, and I wanted to put on concerts, and I just wanted to do all of the things to promote this underground culture. Um, and so, in that sense, I'm very proud of the fact that we've put out, like a lot of my hero labels, we put out bands that we feel are emotionally intense and original and from all over the world. Um, I think we're probably close to 150
Wow,
releases maybe by now.
that's cool.
Um, Financially, it's a stupid idea. It's especially in the age of like this is a weird time because you have streaming, which
Yeah,
pays nothing,
nothing.
and that's the majority of the way people do it. And you have vinyl, which I love. I love vinyl, and it has made a comeback. but financially vinyl is a not a good return compared to like compact discs were. Compact discs were really cheap and the payback was good.
Yeah.
They could allow you more of a room for error. Now it's difficult. I mean, sometimes sometimes the label doesn't have enough money to press the records, and I'll have to float it,
You're,
with my
yeah.
own money. Which again, I'm a teacher, so I don't have a lot of it,
Of
but
course.
um, just to get by and just to see it through. But I still believe in the values of working together with a community and supporting artists and helping other bands the way other people helped me, but also having the art come from myself.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like old time values, old world values. Like you go buy the chair from the chair maker, right? You go
Yeah.
buy the shoe from the shoemaker. You buy the album from the album maker, from the artist. So I do like that aspect of it. Even and I have to remind myself of that on the days when it's frustrating.
Not today. Today's a good day.
Okay.
You are now releasing Alone in a World of Wounds. The album will be out on the 16th of this month of May. Um, First of all, I would like you to ask you why this name. I already know where you got the name from the for the album, but I would like you to explain to us why this name and why this specific quote.
Well, the name came to me while I was reading that article. I've read that book several times, and I go back to it often because I really like his language. Aldo Leopold was an author in the early 1900s. He was a hunter, a fisherman, an outdoorsman. I think he was hired in the early form of what we call now like the Fish and Wildlife Department. The
Hmm.
ones that were put by the government in charge of maintaining game populations and fish populations and habitats, and uh, that the relationship between the natural world and humanity is not really a good one, and they really had some backwards ideas back then, um, and still today, obviously. But he was one of the first ones, kind of within the system, to see and vocalize how we were doing it wrong, and that particular quote I think speaks a lot to today because we see how our actions as a society, whether we believe in it or not, just we're by participating in this world that we have been born into, we are participating in the death of everything in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. We are part of this machine, which is just like consuming consuming everything around us at a ever increasing rate. And to me, his quote of, once you receive an ecological education, you will find yourself alone in a world of wounds. And I think that he was talking about that once you become aware, it is extremely sorrowful. It is extremely sad. And there's no cure for that sorrow. There's no cure for that sadness. We have to accept it and live with it. And um, it goes back to these other philosophical ideas that I've been thinking about a lot. I believe that all of our societal ills, whether it be war or greed, even down to our mental health issues with ourselves or our issues with our families and other human beings, our interpersonal issues, all comes down to our disconnect from feeling that we are a part of nature and that we are in relationship with the living and the non-living
Hmm.
aspects of the world. That the rest of the world has energies and sentience in its own way and a way of existing and being, and we are out of balance. And our lack of balance has caused devastating impacts, even to ourselves, uh, and to our own brains. And um, when I look back at becoming an adult, I realize I've always been singing about this. I've always been spiraling in around these same ideas of this sorrow and this sadness of course all of the, actual real life experiences too in my own life, but always bringing them back to the metaphors provided by the natural world. It's kind of like you zoom out.
Mm-hmm.
If you zoom out as far as you can zoom out, like a telescope or something looking into the cosmos, and you zoom in as close as you can look into cellular biology, it starts to look very much the same.
Yeah. Do
And
you do you
so,
do you think do you can or can you report a moment when all this began to s- to to be more present, or, or let me rephrase it. Do you think there is a moment when you can relate and tell, from this moment forward, we forgot to be a part of the world? We are only something.
no, I think about
No,
it a
it's
lot, and I don't.
progressive.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it matters
Mm-hmm.
if we find that spot. I mean, you can point to different examples. Some people might say it's the coming of monotheistic religion.
Exactly.
Some might say it comes with industrialization.
Industrial revolution.
Some
Yeah.
might say it comes with the first agricultural communities. And if you go that deep, then it could also be maybe it was the first human being that became self-conscious and said, "Me,
Me. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Exactly.
am different than you, and this is mine and this is yours." Like, so in some ways it doesn't matter when the break was.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a philosophical curiosity. It's the idea of accepting that that's the way it is, and maybe we can contemplate either past belief systems or look to cultures that are still around, some indigenous communities around the world that still have a better connection than we do, and take some ideas and take some wisdom. And we are a creative species, obviously. If we use our creativity in a more natural way, if we use it in balance, I think we could do the consciousness shift. Is it likely?
Nah.
Doesn't feel like it. Doesn't
Doesn't
feel like
feel.
it most days, and
No.
so in that sense, then uh at least we can take comfort in knowing that everything that we love and feel sorrow for losing right now, all these beautiful things that we love about this incredible planet, um, are a result of a previous extinction. And so something beautiful will come in the future. It may just not involve us.
Exactly. My thought is precisely the same. A curiosity. The name of the title came first, then the album, or came after?
Oh no, the album took a while. Yeah, the album title is almost last.
Mm.
Yeah, I some of these songs date back. Um, I think the very first whisperings of any of these songs was maybe 2016.
Wow.
Some of them, yeah, just a few real simple ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But then that No Wilderness Deep Enough record just appeared for me, and so it was touring that record and realizing I loved singing into these soundscapes. I loved singing into the cello. I loved singing into the synthesizer. I loved singing into the piano. Um, it made me rethink how I wanted to compose, and it unlocked that for me. Unlocked a new doorway, a new pathway. Now I'm finally, I'm 55 years old and I'm just now finding my voice. You know,
Never too late.
Yeah, never too late. And hopefully I'll say that again in 10 years where I discover something equally inspiring. But um so I had some ideas sitting around that I realized were actually connected to that idea. I just didn't know it yet. They were waiting for their home, and that became clear after writing the first few new pieces, inspired by the previous record and
The,
the touring of it.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
So then these old ideas fit in. So it was more of probably a slow 9-year burn with a record in the middle.
Exactly. Can you give us a glimpse concerning the creative process? Because I see a lot of synths, a lot of piano, everything around you. But can you? Because a lot of persons, when I told that I was coming talk to you, they were very curious to know about that because they are fans from Neurosis, and now they would like to know how did you create the process of creating these songs, not in the first record but now on this one?
Um, it always just starts with a sound, a simple
Same old
accord.
sound, the sound.
Yeah, just a sound. Could just be three notes, and the way that when you hold a simple chord of two or three notes together,
Mhm.
especially in piano, for example, with a guitar you only have six strings, and most of them don't resonate when you're fretting a chord. But on a piano, when you play a chord, that whole wooden box full of strings is vibrating, and there's these overtones that are much more complex,
Mhm.
and it suggests different melodies, it suggests different ideas, and it pulls something different out of me. Like, even though I've had some vocal cord issues since the last record, and I've really, my voice is quite compromised. Actually, it's demanding more out of my voice than I've ever had because it's pulling these melodies out. And same with synthesizer waves. You take a couple of oscillators and you detune them, and you have them kind of sitting there in this rich wave. It just I don't know, it pulls something different out of me. So it always starts very simple, very complex, usually a very simple repetitive figure,
Mhm.
whether it's three chords or a couple of moving notes. I mean, my piano skills are very limited, but a lot of it was composed on piano, uh, which I have one in the house, and I just sit in the living room and you know, I mess around until I hear something I like. And when I have something I like, I record it so I don't forget it, and
Mhm.
then I'll often like revisit it. Sometimes a song will happen fast, sometimes it'll disappear for 9 years and come back in a different form when its time is right. I really, there's no one method,
Mhm.
but it's usually sounds first, words last.
Words last. When you sit on the piano, do you look at the instrument as a challenge or something more more like an intuition with your fingers crossing all the keys?
Yeah, it has to be intuitive because I just don't know anything about it. I feel like a caveman hitting rocks with sticks. Um, but I'm pretty sure I could make a record that way too if I had to. Rocks
Only
and
to
sticks.
exactly. Rocks and sticks, rocks and sticks. The sound of this record and the previous one, it's very different from what you do in Neurosis. But do you think there is some point they might touch each other or don't?
I think everything I've done is related
Yeah.
because each thing inspires and informs the other. Without my work and meeting the guys in Neurosis and doing what we did, um, and exploring the sounds that we explored, would not have opened my mind up in the same way, to where we just felt no limitations, and we did a lot of different things exploring sounds because we were interested in so many different types of sound art, everything from the obvious things like Black Sabbath and early Pink Floyd and Black Flag and punk rock and Discharge, um, but also the weird outsider stuff like Throbbing Gristle and uh, Coil, and even the early sound artists like Stockhausen and minimalist composers as well. Like all of that kind of um, informed us. Even something like Public Enemy,
Yeah.
the use of the sampler in the late '80s was no joke, man. Oh wow, we can turn any sound in the world into an instrument, and that that also changed our entire world and outlook. So um, I think that being part of all of those things allowed my very primitive skill set to be able to, it validated that having a primitive skill set is not a limitation if you're open-minded enough to see the possibilities and how to use your limitations to your advantage to
Yeah.
express yourself. And as long as your expression is true and authentic and you're saying something that you mean, then it might resonate with somebody else.
In an interview that I heard from you a few a month ago, I suppose, maybe not so much, maybe a few weeks, you said that your writing on the lyrics of the album was kind of like a live collage. If we had the newspaper, we do it a collage with the words and everything, but your is a live. Can you explain a little bit more about this concept?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about the poetry, right?
Poetry.
I
Yeah,
took the
yeah.
line, I stole my own line for the song, right? And so now that line lives in a song and it lives in a poem. Um, but because I've because a poem has to live on a page of paper and it has to own it. It has to live on this piece of paper for anyone to read and make sense of. A lyric to a song has to have the right um, syncopation, has to have the right rhythm, has to have the right vowel sound. Are you going to hang on a ah or o or e? You know, it has to um, live sonically in a way that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, oftentimes, while writing lyrics, some of the lyrics will come from just listening to the song and as seeing what the song is suggesting sound wise, and of course, it's it's my own brain, so I'm filtering what I'm thinking about and the things that I'm obsessing about, or the philosophical wonderings, or my day to day trials, and sometimes it could even be a mundane daily event that we all experience just in life. You know, my life's not different from anyone else's in that way, um, but putting it into metaphor, putting it into something bigger than myself, um, opens it up to multiple levels of interpretation. And so, in that sense, I feel very free to look through my journals of poetry or writings or free verse, or even sometimes it'll just be a collection of lines I thought of that sound good. Like,
Yeah,
oh, that
yeah.
sounds good. I'm going to write it down. And so I'll look through my journals and I'll find other things that make sense. And so, you know, this first line could be about uh, a feeling of loss. And the second line could be about a time that I was in the mountains with friends. And the third line could be about the time I, uh, was investigating some deep philosophical idea. And the fourth line could be about the time I got injured skiing on the mountain, or what, like, and nobody knows these things that they're about, nor do I feel like explaining them, because I don't feel that there's power in that. The power is in the fact that those four lines, which came
Together.
from different aspects of my life, come together to become something new, bigger than myself, bigger than my little life, and something more with something more universal. And sometimes I don't even they can become so abstract that I don't even know what they mean anymore. Um, but they get deeper and more powerful, and then it'll come to me later. Like sometimes, like it could even be years later, and I could even be singing it on stage in front of people, and in my brain, it clicks.
Click.
Like, and it was almost like the song was predicting the future. Like, oh, this didn't happen when I wrote the song, but this is what that song's about.
That's
You
so
know,
cool. Yeah,
and so
yeah.
it becomes like words can be like your own tarot cards or something. Like
Yeah.
it just helps you focus your mind on what's important to you.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that is very, very, I don't know, magical in this album, it's your voice, because I think it's more powerful and more and even more unique. And I would like to ask you, did you already knew how do you want to sing in the album, or the songs were guiding you through your own voice? I can hear someone I miss a lot, Lanigan, because I can hear him sometimes in your voice,
Oh,
and
I wish.
it's so recomforting. It's absolutely lovely hear you sing in this album. Um, did you had this idea? Did you knew how to sing the songs, or each song tell you, Steve, now you're gonna sing like this to
The
me?
songs tell me. The
The
songs
songs
tell.
tell. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
That's why I that's why I really like singing into these different instruments.
Yeah,
Right, at least right now, because it's pulling something different
yeah,
out of me. I feel like the guitar became a box. Composing on guitar became too narrow for me, and I needed to shake it up. And it's ironic that, and you're not the first one to tell me that my voice has become, I don't know, bigger, deeper, richer, something better, because I've actually had like a physical issue where I've had to seek help. I've actually lost a couple of my lowest notes in the
oh,
last since the last previous record. My voice gets very fatigued very early in the day. I mean, here it's only 11 a.m. and I'm already feeling very hoarse.
yeah,
Um, and you know, yeah. So in some ways, I'm more limited than I've ever been because I have this damage to my larynx and my vocal cords, but this music is asking me to be more expressive than I've ever been, and so it's kind of an irony. But perhaps it was the losing my voice and having to work just to save what I have left that actually made it stronger. I mean, my range isn't bigger; my range is more limited. But um, the act of taking those songs out there, working hard to make sure that every night I have enough of a voice to finish the concert. You know, because by the end of the day, that's the worst time. I wish
yeah.
all concerts could be at about 9 a.m. Then I'd be in good shape. But um, in fact, all of the vocals for the record, I recorded most of them in here before noon.
Before noon.
Before noon, yeah, because I had to have a voice. Um, and so yeah, no, it's the music that's pulling out of me. It's the work I've done with a vocal coach to help me
Mm-hmm.
learn how to correct my voice when it's going wrong, and how to they're not singing lessons, you know, like I'm still, but they're like just like vocal therapy
Yeah.
in how to get the voice to maintain itself. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, thank you. What you said is really it's hard for me to admit sometimes that I have a good voice, and people make comparisons with great singers, and I just go,
No,
no.
you have to believe me, because I always tell to my son, "Mom never lies, so I never lie." So you have to
Well, I'll take
believe
that as a massive compliment, and thank you. Yeah.
You already said that you record almost everything in your studio at home where you are now, but then you add something extra with the producer Randall Dum, who already spoke about him. How is it to work with him? Because it's huge, and the work that he does is huge.
Yeah, I mean, we just get along really well, and
Yeah,
I just have a trust. He works. I don't like to labor. I don't like making music to feel like work.
yeah,
I like it to feel like play. Although I take it seriously. Um, so he's very intuitive. He's very fast. I like his decisions most of the time. You know, we rarely have to uh, argue or debate. and when we do, it's just about uh, um, it's not about a philosophical difference. It's just about a choice to be made, between one or the other. But yeah, he actually flew out here to help me set up the vocal sound
Mm-hmm.
because I had bought some new gear so that I could do a really good vocal here. Because it's one of the things I love about making records is actually going to really cool studios, even though I can't afford it. It's like some people like going to Hawaii or to the beach.
You go to studios.
I like going to studios, yeah, and making records. Um, so I still wanted to go somewhere else to finish it, so we went to Circular Ruin in Brooklyn
Mm-hmm.
to mix it on a really nice console and through really nice, vintage gear and analog gear in the mixing process. But I needed to be able to make it here on my own time. Um, and so all the basic tracks I recorded here. The most of the vocals I did here. I did some at my friend's Scott Evans studio in Oakland, California, because he had a nice piano. My piano in the house, one, it's in the house with the dogs and the refrigerator and everything else, so it's not a quiet environment. And two, it's really old and doesn't tune to A440 pitch. Um, so my friend had a really nice one down in Oakland, so I went down there to record my piano parts there. And I had him redo some vocals with me because I needed the other person in the room for feedback,
Yep.
so sometimes I really need that other person to give me a little pat on the back and tell me it's okay, and that I could leave it. Um, so, but yeah, going in, and Randall oversaw most of the overdubs before I got there. Our last two records we worked with Brent Arnold,
Mm-hmm.
the cello player who actually did all of the string arrangements. And on the previous record, he was kind of taking the lead from my string synthesizer ones. But after doing that, he realized on this new one he had more freedom to be more expressive and really did some incredible cello work. I can't imagine the record without it. Actually, it really became a feature.
It would be completely different without the cello because
Yeah,
give him soul, even more soul.
yeah, I
Right.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Even
just was able to 2 weeks ago in Roadburn in Holland was the first time I actually played with him on stage, and it was great.
it
It
was
was great.
magical, I imagine.
It was magical. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing, another subject very charming about this record is the cover. It's a beautiful cover. Who's this responsible for that artwork so magnificent that you have?
Well, the photograph was done by a local photographer named Brian Deemy, who
Mm-hmm.
is on the internet as Light and Labor Studios, and he's an artist who does these historical photograph techniques. This
Mm-hmm.
one was a tintype using colloidal silver and different chemicals in the old style box, but his is different in that he also does some digital landscapes and backgrounds. Like the image of the coyote on the cover is really there in the camera. It's a vintage piece of taxidermy that I rescued from. I knew I wanted a coyote to be on the cover, but I didn't want to support the industry that kills coyotes. So
Exactly.
I needed to find a vintage specimen that was, maybe a little bit worse for wear. And I also wanted one that looked alive, that looked, and that maybe looked a little bit sad or worried or, it's actually in the office right now over there. Um,
Really?
yeah, she's really beautiful. Um, and she oversees our work. Um, but he makes these backgrounds that are realistic, but a
Mm-hmm.
little bit weird. They're just a little bit off. They're almost like vintage science fiction in a way,
Yeah.
uh, but also antique because of the photographic process. So I just really he has a lot of art that I really like on his websites, and I've seen a lot of his prints. And so I knew once I saw his art in a local bookstore that I wanted him to do it, and I contacted him, and luckily he was really into the idea and liked it. And so yeah, after the long search for the right coyote and working on it, he framed it together, and we worked together on visualizing it. The back cover, I took my favorite chair from the house and did the same thing, put that in the same environment. And I chose the coyote because, going back to the meaning of the title,
Mm-hmm.
about what it's like living in this age where humanity has, and our lifestyle has such a devastating impact on the natural world and the more than human world. The coyote is the one example in North America where um, our society has been at war against the coyote since the 1800s, and uh, some of the earliest chemical weapons factories built in the United States were built to kill predators in the West in the early 1900s, because what were some of the big early industries? Of course,
Yeah.
farming, cattle, sheep, right? Uh, Out here in the Wild West,
Mm-hmm.
that those were some of the biggest industries and most corrupt industries. But so there was a great war against predators, and they were very successful against wolves and bears, anything of value,
Mm-hmm.
um, anything whose fur was worth a lot of money. But the coyote was sneaky and has actually expanded its range, despite the fact that there was a full-on war to eliminate it completely, and there still is. Uh, there's almost no rules against killing coyotes in the United States.
Didn't know.
Um, and some people get off on it in a sick way, and they think they're doing people a favor by eliminating them. But I just love the way that they're creative and they have multiple strategies to survive and expand, and they've actually gone beyond their original range, whereas most animals have had their range and their disappear. They've figured out ways to
To grow.
figure it, yeah, to survive. And so I really love their resilience
Yeah.
and their ability to survive in the face of such hatred and such devastating war. And so, and also, there's a lot of ancient mythologies and stories of native peoples where coyote is a creator, where coyote is a trickster, where coyote is a force of change, whereas a force of good, a force of bad. It's a complex figure with a lot of
Yeah.
complex history, and I just think that speaks a lot to the thoughts behind a lot of the record.
Yeah, yeah. And you had another beautiful help in the cover and of the album, because Niela, your wife, wrote something there, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, her handwriting is really
It's
when we
pretty
first,
cool. So beautiful.
yeah, when we first started dating, and I would go to Germany to visit, or she would come to here to visit, and just the way she wrote, like I was like, "Did you practice this? This is like like some kind of beautiful script." But
It's
she just made it. It's just the way she writes. If we go to the grocery store and we have a list of uh, of things to buy, apples, bananas, or what, it looks
Gertrude.
like it, yeah, it looks like that. And so, some before the last record, when I was thinking, I don't know if you've ever done graphic design or
No.
you're looking for some sort of, when you start trying to choose a font,
Mm-hmm.
after about 10 minutes, they all look like shit.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, I don't
They're all the
know.
same.
Yeah, they're all the same. They're all horrible. They all look, then, and so to have it handwritten, um, I think made a huge difference. It makes it more personal.
Yeah.
It makes it more inviting. It's not canned. It doesn't feel mechanical. And yeah, I just feel her writing is beautiful.
No, it's pretty cool. It's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful cover. Um, what is being the best thing of being a musician, Steve?
Hmm. I honestly can't imagine life without it. I'd have no idea where I would be.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's unimaginable to me
yeah.
what life would be like without music. because it's where I've met all of my people. It's where uh, I don't think I'd be a teacher if I didn't take that whole road first. Um, it's where all my values and came from, is from the DIY independent music community. It's all my best friends are scattered around the world because I've had the good fortune of being able to travel and make friends all over the world. So the best part about it's almost unanswerable because it's my life.
Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah,
Everything.
it's everything.
Everything. I would like to ask you another question before we go. You are a part of, I have to read it, Fire Firekeeper Alliance. I
Firekeeper Lane. Yep.
I know that it's an organization committed to reducing suicide among the young people. As a mother of a young person, and we are all in our house, surrounded all the time by young people, and this is a problem that has been even more problematic in Portugal and in Europe. I would like you to tell us a little bit more about this organization, and what do you feel about this work? What do you feel about this problem? Because you reach so many people. I think it's so important to give them this. What do you do with this organization?
Yeah, Firekeeper Alliance was started in the fall of last year by some really great folks in Montana, the next state
Mhm.
over. It's a group of educators, teachers, and mental health professionals um, that work in the schools in the Blackfeet Nation. So in the Blackfeet tribal lands, their traditional lands, and as you can imagine, the last few hundred years of settler colonialism uh, has devastated these communities, obviously, and the intergenerational trauma as a result of colonialism and European colonialism of North America um, is something that they're still in the middle of. You know,
Yeah.
we write it off in history books as a thing in the past. These people are still here. They're still connected to their land. They're still here in their traditional ways. Um, but the Blackfeet Nation youth, the target range, the junior high, high school range, has experienced a major upswing in suicides
Listen.
in in their community in recent years. And one of the things that the people I'm now proud to call friends and colleagues did was to not just say, okay, we need to do something about suicide in our community, or you know, there's a suicide epidemic in Indian country. These are things that have already been talked about and people are working on. What makes this group very different, and how I can actually come in and have any sort of expertise in, because I'm not a counselor. I'm an educator and I'm a parent, so of course I understand those aspects. But as a non-Indian, I don't understand what it means to their community, because their community is very different than us of European heritage, right? And all of the mental health um, programs, all of the kind of like philosophy behind the assessing suicidality, treating it, preventing it,
Hmm.
dealing with the aftermath, they've all been geared towards mainstream society, and they're not necessarily relevant to uh, people in Indian country.
Yeah.
They have their own communities, their own ways of thinking, which are quite different from ours in the mainstream. And we could even say that the strategies in the mainstream are probably not working,
Yeah. They are
right?
not.
Yeah, so they have some really ingenious ideas of how to turn that on its head, of uh, uh, how to normalize suicidal thought, about how to acknowledge that these are this, you know, how to make it uh, how to not stigmatize somebody who's thinking of killing themselves.
Yeah.
You know, like it's fucking normal to feel fucked up, right? But how do we support that? How do we make the community support that? How do we support all of that? And that's different in Indian country than it is in the mainstream. And so they are working really hard to find their own ways. But one of their strategies, and again, where I come in, is they see heavy, intense emotional music, whether it be hardcore, metal, punk, the DIY strategy that we've learned, finding your community, is a protective factor. So not only connecting with their ancestors, connecting with their traditions, connecting with their land that they are still living on, and their traditional medicines and their traditional healing practices, but also heavy music. Despite mainstream society thinks that heavy music maybe causes bad things or causes,
No.
yeah, but we know that it fucking got us to survive our crazy lives, and it helps us make sense of a world we don't understand. It helps us, even those of us who, I mean, I'm a white middle class male in America, right? This society is supposedly made to support me, but I've never felt that that's what I believe in. I've always felt outside, and that's why I found my own culture and my
Yeah.
own community and my own people who believed similar things to create something different than the mainstream. And so they see that these ideas can be a protective factor for youth, that if we can support them in their love for heavy music, intense music, gnarly music, that allows them to process
Yeah.
these heavy emotions. And not only that, but maybe to find a community and be able to express their emotions together, on top of reconnecting with their ancestral heritage, could have a huge impact and could actually reduce suicides. And they partnered with this festival called Fire in the Mountains, which had previously been in the state of Wyoming, which was already a really cool festival in that they had really epic music in really epic landscapes in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
No corporate sponsorship, totally independent. But they also had, it, so you had all these heavy, intense bands, but you also had nature walks and plant ethnobotany walks, and you had yoga, you had indigenous perspectives talking about land and landscape and music. So you had these deep conversations, which you would normally see at maybe like some of them would be more in like a mental health or a heal or a wellness community or a
In a
sort
wellness.
of or hippie, like festival or something. But so you had all these like really beautiful philosophical ideas, and now it's gone a step further because now they've made a partnership with the Blackfeet Nation, and Firekeeper Alliance has been in charge of putting together all of the cultural panels and landscapes. So we're going to have musicians talking about how heavy music has helped
Wow.
us get through. You're going to have native people talking about how connecting to the landscape and to traditional ways has helped them survive, about how to deal with the deep sorrow that the communities feel that have dealt with suicide, and how the shockwaves that sends through a community, about how what resilience we can all learn from native communities that have survived the last 500 years of genocide and colonialism. Um, it's really kind of it's so the unity of the festival, the tribe, and the Firekeeper Alliance kind of being the bridge, and also working day to day with the students. They've had a class going on there since January in both high schools, where myself, Evar from Enslaved, Nate Newton from Converge, and several other people have zoomed into the class and let them interview us about how heavy music has helped us get through and helped us get by, and let them talk and get into it. And the teachers there are giving them like the history of hardcore and metal and punk. And
It's beautiful.
yeah, it's really, I think it's really unique, and especially with the connection to heavy music. And that's where obviously that's where I feel like I can have something to offer. I can take that what they're doing out into my larger international community to bring attention to
It's a
um
beautiful. It's
that.
beautiful. Beautiful. Send them my congratulations.
I
And
will.
thank you for being such. It's marvelous. No words. Steve, when can I see you in Portugal? Haha.
Fuck. I wish soon, but I won't be there this summer because I only have a 3 week opportunity to come to Europe, and I'm
Yeah.
stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
Can't, yeah, lots of complaints from the south and the north. But I did meet Andre again, from Amplifest when I was
Yes,
at Burn. So
a great friend, my dear Andre.
yeah, so maybe we'll figure some way to get me over there. I'd love to come to Portugal and Spain and concentrate on that area for a little while and so maybe next year. I don't know. We'll see.
I will be waiting for you on the front line and to say, Steve, I'm here.
And it would be nice to meet in person, of course.
It was a great, enormous, huge, whatever pleasure to have you here. You are a great musician, you are a great poet, and you are a fabulous person. So I have to say thank you so much, Steve. It was an honor.
Thank you. And thank you for your time and your thoughtful questions. I really appreciate it. It's people like yourself that give people like me a place to express our art and to carry on the culture. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Bye bye. Thank you so much.
All right. You take care.